Hey everyone, I'm Fred and welcome to Value First, the product-led sales podcast, a show where I interview PLG sales and growth leaders who share their secrets on how to grow revenue at SaaS companies. Today, my guest is Darren Chait. He's the founder and CEO of Hugo, the connected meeting notes platform. Darren and his team have built an incredible product-led motion and have users at companies like Calendly, Slack, Shopify, and Netflix. Darren, thanks for taking the time. How are you?
Thanks, Fred. Good. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Well, let's just start with why did you start Hugo and what you guys are solving?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hugo's a meeting productivity hub for teams. We centralize meeting notes and the preparation, note-taking, action, and follow-up process from meetings. And it's kind of funny because I come from a background, I'm originally Australian, but I come from a background as a corporate lawyer and attorney, and I spent my whole life in meetings, right? Like all I did all day was sit in meetings. And the pain that I had around meetings is much like everyone else. And sharing that with my co-founder, Josh, we really were frustrated with how much time we spend in meetings, how little value we got from meetings. And even when you have one of those great meetings, right, full of ideas, tons of action, everyone's aligned on the same page, as soon as you leave the room, that value dissipates. It's like disappears into thin air. And for everyone who was in the room, no way they're getting anything out of that meeting. So we went about solving that with Hugo, and we realized that if we could just capture what was happening in the room with the existing note-taking process that everyone was already following, use that to centralize, base the data on the calendar to make it accessible and actionable, and connect it to the rest of the tools we're using, we could completely transform the value of meetings for teams.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I when I saw the product hunt post for you guys and how you and Josh came across a problem building another tool, and I related to the problem. It's the same thing, like spend too much time in meeting, not taking the value that we get from meeting aside from it. So a question I would have for you, because I think what you're saying is great. I love Hugo as a tool, but we're stuck in remote work, which has created more meetings. So do you think like remote work is creating a meeting overload? And aside from using Hugo, what do you think are quick tips to get out of that, like always in Zoom call mode?
Yeah, totally. It was kind of funny when COVID hit, if you like, last February, March. I remember like having dashboards up, and I was totally expecting usage to fall off a cliff because I'm like, well, everyone's now like can't meet in person. They're at home. They're balancing all the everyday life stuff. How are we going to attend meetings? And it literally did the inverse. Like the volume of meetings just kept going up and to the right. And it blew my mind. Like how we can't meet anyone. Sales pipelines are dried up. No one was spending money, and we're all balancing, the life stuff. So it just shows what happened, which is remote hit, and everyone felt like to maintain the collaboration and contact we had in the workplace, we needed more and more meetings. They're like, hey, Fred, check this out, now turned into 30 minutes on your calendar. So I totally think, we meeting hygiene and health went the wrong way when the pandemic hit. For us as a team, the way we've got around that is know when there's time for meetings and when we need to have discussion, debate, decision making, but know when we just need to collaborate, but meetings aren't right. And asynchronous collaboration has been our secret there. We use video a ton. We obviously use Slack and chat apps like that a ton. And very often, I need to collaborate with you, but I don't need you online right now to do that. I can share my insights, my feedback, my thoughts. You can do the same when you're next online, and we can move ahead that way without another meeting.
Yeah, and I realized that too when I did the 4-hour week challenge of Hugo with your team, and realizing how important it is to run effective meetings, but also to block time in your calendar for just focused work. And remote work has made it harder and harder to do so. One thing that I want to talk about is starting Hugo. So from scratch, you guys built a really strong product-led motion. You're a classic product-led startup. You're great at building content, and you have a lot of signups. How did you go about starting from that motion from scratch with Josh and really building the funnel to acquire users?
Yeah, totally. So it's product-led growth is very much in our DNA. We don't come from a background either Josh or myself as sales folks. So it's not a natural skill that we have to be able to go out and sell software in a high touch way. The inverse though is that Josh is a real product guy. And I'm a pretty technical sort of marketer, if you like, or I get really excited about no code solutions and automated solutions to doing things at scale. And just having that perspective really pushed us to leverage our skills and our interests to grow that way. So Josh is looking at it from the product angle, like what features can we build that are going to help with acquisition and growth? And I'm looking at it going, okay, what can we ship? What can we do that's super smart that's going to allow us like disproportionate results from a growth standpoint? And the two together have allowed us to have this product first or this product-led growth machine that helps us grow without a single person on the sales team.
Yeah, I think that's super relevant to keep in mind is product-led growth is also about when you have a problem, trying to build something into the product itself to fix that problem rather than hiring someone. I was speaking to Esben, the CEO at Userflow, and he's like, when I have a ticket for something in the product or when people get stuck or when they're trying to upgrade and they can't, instead of hiring a CS rep, I just build the feature in the product and it solves itself. And I think you guys are using that same mentality and it's paying off clearly. So I want to dive deeper because you implemented something that I think is super smart and it's called Tech Touch. So it's the motion or the funnel that you guys built for your new signups. And I'm a user of Hugo and I showcased Tech Touch in the PLG sales ebook because the relevancy of your touch points are crazy when it comes to your automated campaigns. So let's just start with, for people who don't know, what is Tech Touch and how did you guys start building that motion?
Yeah, totally. So off the back of that, I think everything we should be focused on for a company at our stage while we're so resource constrained should think about leverage, right? Which is what can we do that has the greatest return? In general, we love to do one-to-many things. So an investment I can make that I get a return from time and time again. So if I spend 30 minutes with a customer, it's very valuable. We should all be talking to customers and not to discount that at all. But the best possible outcome is I create a lot of value for that single customer in 30 minutes. If I spend 30 minutes building a very personalized email campaign, I can go to sleep, I can go on vacation, I can do anything. And while I'm not there, tens of thousands of customers can get value from that email campaign. And maybe this is me speaking from my lawyer days where if you're not billing time, you're not making money. But it just killed me that I would only be able to spend time and in a one-to-one setting. And if you're not working, there's no value created. So that helped us inform how we were going to approach customer success, activation, and really just a great customer experience. Why is it that you have to have a huge team of customer success managers or account executives to create value for all your customers? Why doesn't it be so expensive in this way? And old-fashioned customer success thinking says that the higher the value of the account, the higher the touch, the lower the value, the lower the touch. So if you're not spending much money, you don't get anything from us. If you spend a ton, we'll throw everything at you. But it doesn't account for the fact that more technical approaches to customer success and customer experience don't cost any money. So why do I only need to provide the customers spending a ton of money with us with that value? And at the same time, as we've seen, most of our growth through expansion. So we might pick up a newer customer who's spending $500. They've got potential to spend $50,000, but we're not spending any high value time with them because they're only spending $500, but they're never going to get to 50,000 unless we do it. So our approach to Tech Touch is to use a ton of technology to provide the same sort of experience that a $50,000 customer would receive, but without the overhead of hiring CSMs. How do we do that? There's a whole bunch of ideas. We use email, very personalized emails a lot. So we rely a lot on our data stack, and we use all the insights we know about the customer to provide them only relevant communication. So that may be emails that not just insert, "Hey Fred, hope the weather in Montreal is great."
Yeah, the
Insert
basic
city, right?
personalization that I'm for sure gonna go like I don't think that works anymore. I
No,
don't
we
think
can
that
all
works
sift
anymore.
through. I've
But
seen too many.
yeah, I saw a great example to give an example to listeners. When you use Hugo on a Saturday, it triggers something in customer IO, and you receive an email saying from the founder saying, "Hey, we know how hard it is, the grind working on Saturday. If you get a bug, another example, you're going to receive an email saying, "Hey, we just saw that it didn't work out in the product. We're trying to fix it." So I think speaking of contextual, and we'll get to that because it's an important factor in product-led sales. But I think you guys are taking it to the next step that I'm in Montreal. Like, how many employees and the company name of my company. That's not personalizing. That's just using basic enrichment. But
Exactly.
implementing a system that is contextual, that's personalization, right?
And you know what, right? Like even having the contextual triggers for stuff, you need, like, even if I'm the best CSM, right? And I come to work every day and I look at every one of my accounts and look for these opportunities, it's too slow. Unless someone's tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey Fred, you need, like, just so you know, this customer just ticked over this, this usage, or this customer has this problem, go reach out now," and you get an email from me an hour later. It's too slow otherwise. So using software and triggers in this way is actually going to provide a much better experience than the best CSM or account executive in the world can ever provide anyway.
Yeah, and I see sales assisted campaigns also work that way. Of Opinion X is a great example. When I reach certain milestones in the usage of their product, it triggered an automatic message. And then if I wanted to learn more, if I engage, then the human comes in. So that's really interesting. My next question to follow up on that is, how do you think? So you guys built a great sequence with Tech Touch, and I think just to give context to users, you guys use a mix of segment, some customer data internally, and then you trigger stuff in customer IO mainly. That's how you do it. How do you think sales can be added on top of Tech Touch? Because you guys are building your sales team right now.
Yeah.
You're looking into ways to integrate AEs for high valued accounts and expansion. How do you think that shapes in with your Tech Touch sequence and how that overlays?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because I always, growing up in SaaS, I always thought you're a tech touch, like, or a product led company, or you're a sales led company, and you
Yeah.
choose your path, and both can be successful. We were more excited about the product led path, but there's many great examples of both. What we've learned more recently as we've grown up, if you like, that's not the case. You can build a sales org on top of a product led business very successfully. And in fact, you need to at a certain point. There's only so much companies will spend, or it takes a certain amount of time to reach certain values without someone helping. But it's not one or the other. So the way we do that at the moment is we have automated handoffs. When you reach certain points in your life, triggers, leading indicators of success, we'll hand you over to an account executive to take that further. And the account executive isn't starting from scratch. They're using the data that you've that from your campaigns and everything to that point.
Yeah.
It's like you've been dealing with a robot AE, if you like, and now you're dealing with a real one. It's seamless. It doesn't matter. So the whole process ties in together. We look at the customer experience of, like, okay, you sign up. Here's how we're going to provide you this great experience. We're going to keep adding value. We're going to keep communicating in this personalized way at the right times. And it's just going to be this natural switch at some point where a human's coming in with all the same context, with all the same information. And really, at one point, it triggers to a customer IO automated email. At the next point, the triggers to the human to chat, to give you a call, to reach out, whatever it is. It's just another touch point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we talk about working alongside users and the importance of having people internally is, yes, you want to automate most of your users, maybe 60% of your users you want to automate, but another part of them, you want a human to interact. And the great part about product-led growth is it widens the range of your top of funnel, but then you don't want to miss out on the revenue opportunities that cannot necessarily be captured by full automation. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Another thing that I want to talk about, because you guys are really, really good at it, and I've been involved in some of that, but it's using product usage or what people do in Hugo to build marketing content. So switching the discussion 100%, it's something else, not product-led sales necessarily, but you guys are really good. And I think good insights can come to our listeners that are early SaaS founders and product-led growth. You guys really use what your people do, what your users do in the product to build content. An example of that is the templates that are great for SEO, that create reach. So can you give more explanation around that strategy? Because I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. So ultimately, we're in a space, with meeting productivity and the way teams work, where we're learning from our customers every day, right? Like, one of my biggest, we chatted about this before, but one of my biggest imposter syndrome moments is soon after we started Hugo, talking to a customer and they said, "Hey, can you give me some advice?" And then this is like the CEO of I think a 4,000 person company. "Can you give me some advice on how we should be running our one-on-ones?" And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, I'm a startup founder. Like, what do I know about
No way.
running one-on-ones? And it's because people look to us, and obviously now where we're at, a few years later, we do know a lot about that. It's what I think about and deal with all day and all night. But people are, we're seeing the best of the best, right, amongst our customers, right, for this processes and content and how they run their meetings and what works and what doesn't. And where with permission stealing these ideas and sharing them and talking about them all the time. So we're in this unique position to curate best practice, and with that insight, the templates are a huge one. So we have about 150 templates on our website and in Hugo that you can download or you can add to your Hugo account, where you can learn how Uber runs their sprint planning, or Atlassian does their retrospectives, and use that for your team and adapt it. That helps obviously with customer acquisition and helping us position ourselves as a thought leader. And we're not even doing the heavy lifting from a content creation standpoint. We're literally just curating and connecting the dots. Another example is some of the trends we're seeing with calendar data. We have millions and millions and millions of events. Obviously, it's all secure and private, but we can aggregate and analyze in an aggregate sense with it anonymized to learn what's happening out there. I just when the pandemic hit, I wrote an article for Quora on this, where the insight I mentioned earlier, where the curves did the opposite of what we thought, and looking at some anonymized meeting titles, all the meetings were like update, sync, check-in, chat, like these sorts of things that never used to be meetings. And we were talking about how people were using their calendar for what used to be workplace chat. So we're very lucky, I guess, and we've been able to leverage what our customers are doing with Hugo and in the space as a source of insightful content that's helping both our customers and readers of our content, work better as a team.
Yeah, and it has benefits to so many aspects, whether it's SEO, reach, but it also adds value to your users, right? Because you see templates from companies like Calendly, from companies like Slack. And again, I'm not here to just shout out Hugo, but it's a great technique for product-led businesses, because even though maybe you don't convert a user or the account is not a great ACV, for example, well, you can still monetize in some indirect way by having the data that they've used in your free product, what they built, what they're doing, and having data to showcase best practices. So I think this strategy is really beneficial, like on all fronts of Hugo. So I think it's really smart.
It's a smart way of thinking about it, actually, which I haven't done expressly before, like the data value, right? And not that we're selling data or monetizing data that way, but if you have an account that's freemium, because we have a freemium tier, or not spending a lot of money, but they're contributing great data from a template standpoint and things like that, there's a ton of value for us as a business, and that then in turn helps acquire more customers. So yeah, it's totally right.
It's also great to expand customers, right? If you're looking at an account that has great potential, it's your ICP, but they only have a few users, and you can showcase the value based on product data that they're getting. For example, Phantom Buster does this. They tell you, hey, you've saved X amount of time already, or there's other tools that send you email like, hey, this is the value that you've got, but another company, for example, you reference a business case, another company are saving or getting, I don't know, 10x that ROI by unlocking those premium features, and you can engage in sales conversations with that data. So I think it goes further than just reach and just more value to your users. That's super smart. Along those lines, you guys are really good at collaborations. You launched a recent collaboration with Loom. What tips would you give early founders as to build collaborations? I mean, I'm in front of you today. You're a way bigger company than we are, so I have some insights on how to collaborate with people. But you guys are really, really good at it. Any suggestions on because that's a great way to build a company early on, is to collaborate with bigger.
Yeah. To be honest, we made a lot of mistakes with partnerships. We got it very wrong early on. In the early days, we went out and tried to build partnerships with as many big tech companies as we could. And most of the way we did that generally is through integration. There's value for our users, and we can build relationships with these companies. And I think what was interesting is that we just went off the biggest brands we could. So we built there's 20 integrations. You'll see all the major CRMs, project management tools, video conferencing products, etc. Now, if, for example, Salesforce, which is one of our most used integrations, we're in the Salesforce App Exchange, their marketplace. They don't really care, to be frank, in the nicest possible way, because they have tens of thousands of apps. So when we started building these relationships, what we didn't quite understand at the time was about mutual value. We were of the view that we're smaller than everyone else. There's nothing we can do, right? So it was just like, how can we try and jump on their back and leverage that brand? But we didn't think about any value we could offer them. And so in turn, the value they offered us was very limited and generic. As soon as we realized that there was an opportunity to offer value to these larger brands, you have this mutually beneficial relationship where you can leverage their brand because they're bigger than yours. They have millions of people, an audience of millions, and their marketing channels and budgets to do things. So how do you do that, right? You've got this big brand. What are you going to do? Well, there's always something strategically relevant. We were the first integration in the Zoom marketplace. Zoom wanted to market their marketplace. They needed a great story there. To do that, we quickly built the integration. We were speaking at Zoomtopia. We're in their press release. We got a ton of co-marketing there when they released that about 18 months, 2 years ago, because they needed a brand to do it. And I assure you, Salesforce is not going to build a Zoom integration, straight off the bat. But us little Hugo certainly were. Atlassian were building a strong message around Atlassian for all teams, because a lot of their users were very much IT or software teams. They were really trying to build a brand around everyone in the business using the Atlassian products. Hugo's a great way to do that, connecting Hugo to Confluence and Jira, they now have a story where marketers and HR and executives and everyone else can use Atlassian products, having Hugo as an interface for their meetings, and so on and so forth. Loom's the same with asynchronous collaboration. We're both huge advocates of async, and we're telling that story that way. We were, again, one of the first partners to build using the Loom SDK, so you can record Loom videos inside your Hugo meeting docs. They needed a brand to do that, especially a company that cares so much about async. We've done a ton of co-marketing, and there's a ton more coming too. So that the partnership shift for us is definitely finding brands bigger than yours with the audience and the reach, so it's valuable, but also looking for those opportunities where you can offer value back up to the bigger brand.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to approach a relationship and like, hey, I want to co-blog for you, or I want to can you give me a backlink? You have to give value, whether it's time, whether it's reach, whatever it is. You have to give, often if you're the smaller company, more value to the company that's going to partner with you. So I think that's a smart insight. Maybe last question I would have on that though is, how did you get in front of those people? Because I know you can request like SDA stuff and developer info, but how did you get in front of key people? Like, how would you recommend someone like me getting in front of someone like you, for example?
Well, we're definitely not on the, we're not at that stage yet. Hopefully we're more accessible than your big brands. But in general, I think they're all open. I mean, most of the big brands have partnership teams, developer relations teams, and and ecosystem teams who this is what they do day in, day out. They're building these relationships. And if you can show the value straight away, so it's worth their while, with the outreach, with the initial email, seeking intros as well, obviously wherever you can, everyone's willing to chat. And I think that's the nice thing. Like, we assume that a brand as big as Zoom or Atlassian don't have time for a startup like us, but they do. They've got teams that are trying to build these relationships, and especially where there's the hint of value straight away early on. We've only had good experiences there. Really, the easy bit has actually been having the conversations. The hard bit has been turning that into substance, shipping something and something of value.
Interesting. All right, so lesson there is it's not that complicated to get in front of people. You just have to show value and actually deliver. Okay, amazing.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, I think it's time to wrap up. You're a very busy person, and I'll have to leave you alone for the day. Before we do, like any respectful podcast, I feel like I have to do the same thing as everyone else and ask you quick fire questions. So I'm gonna ask you four quick fire questions. You answer as fast as you can. You ready?
You go for it.
Cool. What have I not asked you that you think I should ask? Classic sales question.
Yeah. Biggest mistakes, I think, building this from the outset.
Okay. What's the biggest mistakes that you guys made building Hugo?
There's tons. We could have a whole nother show on this. I think
Let's
one
book episode 2 right now.
Yeah, exactly. One quick one I think everyone can take with them. We as founders, we think we've got to have all the answers, and it's our role to solve problems. But we spend so much time hiring, right? You're hiring great people, who are smarter than us, who have domain expertise. Trust your team. Take your problems to your team. They're everyone's problems. We thought we had to shield the team from these problems and come up with solutions. We actually had the inverse, where the team wanted to get their teeth into these big problems. So if you're going to hire smart people, don't tell them how to do things, because you might as well not hire them.
That's a great insight. I can relate to that 100%. Second question, which CEO or founding team do you look up to and why?
Zoom. I think Eric Yuan, the CEO of Zoom, it's incredible what he's built. It's the typical startup story, as far as solving a real problem for the right reasons and building an incredible organization with an amazing culture around it. They've obviously had a tremendous ride, particularly through the pandemic. But anyone you talk to that's had the pleasure of working with him and for him has amazing things to say, and you see what they've done. They've built a product that we thought was solved and existed before, but changed the way we all collaborate and communicate, whether that's with your grandmother, playing Scrabble on a Saturday while stuck at home during COVID, or whether it's pitching for capital. It's the same product that's changing the world.
Yeah, they just made a better product and an easier way to get started, right? That's all there is to it. Obviously, it's more complex to build the actual business, but the core of it is they build a better product. So exactly. I agree. What's the most underrated tool, growth technique, or skill for sales in your opinion?
Yeah, context, timing. It's all about timing, right? Yep. The same play 2 days later can have completely different results to that pinging you in the moment, and having some way of being triggered and having knowing and having the context at the right time is game changing.
Love it. Something you wish you knew when you were 20. It's there's tons. I think it's a bit cliche, but knowing that things work out is probably the most important thing that every startup founder has to learn, that you can't until it's done. The first time someone resigns, right, you think your whole world's over, the company's screwed, it's going to fall over, we're done, this isn't going to work. You get through it and you probably end up bigger and better, right? You realize that the next person you hire could be even better and more suited to what you're doing in that. And then the next time someone else resigns, you get through it. So having that sort of experience is really important. There's not much that happens that is fatal for a business or your career. It's very rare that that can happen. So just trying to have a long-term perspective on these hiccups, I think lets you stay a lot more objective and rational in the situation. Yeah, so, as a first-time founder, I can relate to that 100% because every time something happens, you think the world's going to end and you think that it's not going to work or whatever it is. But I've heard that a lot from people with experience, that just keep in mind that everything's going to work out and it's going to be fine.
Exactly.
And that's just
And it
something
sounds
you don't know.
cliche,
Like, you
right?
don't know what you
Yeah.
don't know, but
Yeah.
I hear it a lot.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that everyone will tell you, but you can't kind of appreciate it until you've been
Yeah.
through it or as you go through it. But ultimately, like, everything is normal, no matter how abnormal it is. It's normal in the world that we're all operating in. So just learning to roll with the punches is critical.
Yeah, there's a lot of cliche stuff that I heard starting out that I was like, this is bullshit. But
Yeah,
finally,
and then
like, looking back, most of the cliche startup
spot
stuff
on.
is true. It's actually true. Amazing.
Seriously,
Well, thank you, Darren. It was really a
thanks,
great
Fred.
chat. I enjoyed it, and hope our
Likewise.
listeners will do too. If people want to learn more about Hugo, they can go to Hugo.team. And what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, Twitter at Darren Chait. Happy to chat, jump into the DMs, and anytime.
Love it. Thanks, Darren. Have a good one.
Thanks, Fred.
See ya.